morning, welcome to Felixstowe TV. On the 8th of January we had an interesting exhibition at the Orwell Hotel. It was called the Health and Wellbeing, and it was dealing with quite a number of issues, but one that was there that caught my eye was a stall that was manned by the young lady to my right, Catherine Osborne, which deals with warm homes, and it's a part of the Warms Homes Healthy People Fund that Suffolk County Council are the lead organiser for, though its delivery is through the districts and boroughs. And I understand that you are located with Suffolk Coastal District Council,
yep,
in the delightful setting of Woodbridge.
Yes, indeed.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Though it would appear from what you're saying, you spend as much time on the road visiting, doing and doing road shows, is that right?
Yeah, bringing the message to the people.
The message to the people, I do. Exactly. That almost sounds like Moses coming down from the mountain, doesn't it? Yeah. And hopefully the outcome might be slightly better.
Yeah.
In that we might end up with people
idea.
who are currently very cold, find it very hard to heat the home in which they are.
Yeah.
Can be given some help, I suppose, in a number of ways, isn't it? One is to make the home more thermally efficient, so they don't use as much energy, and two, you are in a position with assessment of financial circumstances to actually make some payments to help fund the very high fuel bills. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. As you said, fuel poverty is quite a big problem actually in rural Suffolk and those isolated villages and places.
Yes.
As well as in cities, but
well, it applies here. I mean, I don't know whether you're aware of it, but one of our most poverty-stricken areas is South and West Ward, which is down around the docks here in Felixstowe. So I don't think you need to travel too far to find somebody who might be living in fuel poverty. And if we could share with the viewer the numbers, and that's the real frightener, I think, is that the figure that was 10% of our population was, and that was before the significant energy hikes that took place before Christmas. Mm-hmm. So assuming we sort of take that as another 1%, then we're looking, say, at 11%, and we have, I believe, within the district 55,000 households. Yeah. So what we're actually looking at is somewhere between 5,500 to 6,000 homes that are actually in fuel poverty.
Yeah, I mean,
frightening figure.
It could actually be slightly more than that. I heard that the figures for Suffolk were 14% in fuel poverty, and in some areas, in particular in Suffolk Coastal and some of the more rural areas on the east, some areas are up to 25-30% in fuel poverty, which is very shocking.
That is shocking.
But fuel poverty can affect a large number of people, and it's not just people who are poverty-stricken, it's also people who are in large households. And
absolutely. But perhaps we should explain what the definition of fuel poverty is, which is...
the definition is someone that's in fuel poverty if they're spending 10% or more of their income on energy bills.
Right. So we're now looking at energy bills that are running around 500 plus per quarter, aren't we?
Yeah, well,
according to the sort of. So on that basis, that's 2,000 a year. So on that basis, where are we? If you're below, what would that, 12,000 income, then you actually could well be in fuel poverty. Yeah. Depending on how efficient the system is. Yeah. So yes, I can quite see why that's a large number of people, because the average income across our district is far less than it would look from the outside. Yeah. Because rural incomes are very small in comparison to, and their living costs are much higher in the main. You know, shopping and all the rest. But there was an issue that I raised nearly 10 years ago. And it's the source of fuel that we're able to access.
Yeah, that is the problem.
And if we look at here in Felixstowe, for instance, in the Trimleys, we all have the ability to be connected to the gas supply. Yeah. That is not true, I understand, in a lot of our rural communities. Do we know out of the 55,000 dwellings that we have, how many actually have access to gas?
I don't know the exact figures, but I know that a lot of rural communities don't have mains gas, as you said.
Right.
So I was in Shotley on Friday. They don't have mains gas.
Do they not?
No, and there's lots of other examples.
Oh, I'm sure there are.
Yeah, it's very surprising.
So those folk then are having to buy either oil, or electricity, or sort of bottled gas, I suppose.
Yeah, less so, but yeah.
Yeah. So how many of those communities are now buying in bulk? Because there was a move afoot, I understood, some years ago.
There still is.
Say a community, I mean, I'm not sure whether the ferry has gas, but assuming it didn't, then it may well be a community saving effort that they could do if they could combine to buy in bulk.
Those oil buying consortiums we're still trying to encourage people to join up to those, and Suffolk Acre is an example of they're an organisation that organises that.
Right.
So they're the people to get in contact with if anyone.
So I suppose if we look at the elements, we've got the cost of the fuel itself, and I think we've established that can put a fair degree of variety into the mix. Then we've got the dwelling.
Yeah.
Now, what can you do with the dwelling? You yourself, personally,
The main.
when you do your home visit.
Yeah, the main part of the scheme is that we do free independent home energy surveys. Right. So someone from the council, such as myself, will pop into someone's house and just do a quick assessment of the loft and the wall, what sort of walls that they have, and if they can benefit from insulation.
Right.
That way, and then also we'll check the lofts, and we'll also have a look at the boiler and just give them some general energy advice about how to heat their home more efficiently and save money on their fuel bills. Okay,
so if we look at our housing stock, a significant amount of it is pre-1920s.
Yeah, solid walls.
And the construction of housing in those days was just a solid wall.
Yeah.
So there is no cavity.
No.
So you can't readily offer, well, you can't offer them cavity insulation. There's no cavity to insulate. But the what I've noticed over the last several years is that we've attacked the low-hanging fruit, if you like. We've looked at properties that have cavities that are on-filled, and cavity insulation has been made available, either supported or free or whatever.
Yeah.
What have we done with solid walls? Well, which are a wholly different animal.
Yeah, they are much harder to treat, but there are two options of solid wall. There's internal solid wall insulation or external solid wall insulation.
Right.
Both are fairly expensive, but there are schemes out there to help people to treat or to get that insulation on the outside walls of their homes. Right. And what we would do, if we did go to a house that was a solid wall build, then we would refer them on to other schemes that could help them to get that insulation put in. Okay,
so the figures I heard, because I tend to go to places like Eco Building, wherever, we've been doing it for some time, is that assuming you were to treat something like a terrace, then you need to do it efficiently, you need to get all of the owners within that terrace to agree that they would do it. And the cost they were talking about was somewhere around £70 per square metre, plus the insulation, plus. It was certainly not an inexpensive option. Now, an internal fix was cheaper, and obviously an internal fix you can do without the cooperation of a whole block. You can do it, and within your home you really only need to do the external wall, I assume. Your problem seems to be fitting it around the windows and the sills, so that it's a constructional bit, isn't it? And what I find remarkable in the 21st century, when we've sent men to the moon and brought them back and all of those sort of things, where they've gone through minus whatever and plus whatever, we do not have a relatively simple structure that we could actually use like a wallpaper to fit to our internal walls. Is there any work anywhere going on whereby something like that is under research or being done?
I'm not an expert in the area of internal solid wall insulation, but I know that there is a thing called Semper Tap, which I believe is it comes in rolls, and you can put it on as if it was a wallpaper on the inside of the wall, and it's sort of so thick.
Yes.
And then you paint or wallpaper over it.
Right.
I think. So that is available at the moment.
Right.
But I'm sure that the companies have realised that gap in the market, so I'm sure there's work being done.
Well, we live in hopes. I mean, the problem for me, unlike you, I don't have that much longer to be able to avail myself of this, so that I can make the saving at the cost. And this is another major difficulty, and this was debated by many people over many years, is the payback time.
Yeah.
So, to invest to save is fine, assuming that at some point you will save. And from what we're saying, the district would help in doing the loft.
Yes.
And do we have any idea of how many lofts are left to do?
No, I don't. But actually, lofts is a bit more complicated because people don't realise that the current recommendations for your loft installation is 270 mil, which is actually. Would
you like to do that in inches? Because some of our.
It's around 10 inches.
Is it really?
I'm not entirely sure. I don't work in inches, but it
what
is
did
a
you
lot.
say in mils?
270 mil.
Okay, 270.
Whereas a lot of people.
So 2.5 is an inch.
Yeah.
So it's about 11 inches.
Yeah. A lot of people come to me and say, "Oh, I've had my loft installation done," and then they'll say that it was done 30 years ago and it may only be a couple of inches.
Right.
And that isn't up to the current recommendation. So we can offer top-ups in that situation.
Right. Okay. But then that means, to a degree, you use the use of your loft. Would that be right?
Not necessarily. If it would have to be empty to top up the loft installation. There is help out there for people who can't empty their lofts through an organisation called Lofty Heights.
Right.
And then once the loft is put
would that cost them, or is that done as a part of the scheme?
If they can't do it by themselves and they haven't got anyone to help them, then they can get it done.
Right. Okay.
Free from the charity. Yeah.
Right.
And then you can still use your loft once it's been insulated. You can put boards over the insulation and keep stuff in there still.
But then your loft storage space would be outside the warm part of your house. It would actually be in the cold part of the house.
Yes,
would that be right?
You would have. Yeah.
Okay. So I just find it very odd in this country. In fact, I find building here very odd altogether. In that we build this building, we put on a significant amount of space for its roof, and then we don't utilise it.
Well, actually,
we don't utilise it enough.
Yeah, there is another form of insulation. If people have loft conversions and they're using the loft, then you can get insulation put in the rafters and the pitched roof. So then then the entire loft is insulated.
Right, and then you've got living space, because living space is key, isn't it? I take it in new homes now being built, the energy specs are very, very high. So whatever, and that would include the loft living space. So,
new homes.
We live in hopes, because we now see an awful lot of people making money on storing other people's stuff, don't we? Sort of stuff storage. And you've all got too much stuff, haven't you? That you can't store. Let's get back to our poor freezing. What did we say the number was? It was significant. You reckoned it could be up as high as 30% in some of our rural communities where there is no gas, where the preponderant of the build is solid wall, where I suppose you've got an older population who may be totally dependent on a pension. And one thing that came to me, and I don't know whether there's working across the divide of social services and others, the figure in that the county has provided as the number of winter attributable deaths, which we saw just now, I think was somewhere around 450 avoidable winter deaths.
Yeah, that's correct.
That's a huge figure.
I think that was the figure for last year. Yeah.
Is that throughout the county?
As far as I know, yeah.
So we're 7, aren't we? That's over one person a day, obviously concentrated in the winter months. Now, if that was happening on our roads, there would be a public outcry bar none, wouldn't there? We'd all have to travel at 20 miles an hour, and we'd all have to be already bandaged before we could go behind the car. But we just seem to accept the fact that 450 of our fellow citizens in this county freeze to death effectively.
Yeah, from cold-related illnesses. Yeah.
Frightening.
Yeah, it is.
It is. So let's see what you can do to stop that happening, at least for some of them. You go in, you do the survey.
Yeah.
You then do a report, do you, of some sort, or
We'll then pass the details on to my colleague, and my colleague, who's doing the administration side,
yes.
my colleague will get back in touch with them and let them know what we've decided and how we can help them further after the survey. Yeah.
Right. So assuming it was going to be worst case scenario, you're going to go and do a loft for an elderly person.
Yeah.
I take it the appointments are made.
Yes. Yeah.
And these people are CRB checked and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
So they can be quite confident that whoever's come to do it is been approved, cleared, whatever.
Yeah, and trained as well. Yeah.
And they then do what? What's their sort of process?
Well, it depends on each of the surveyors, I imagine, but they would go into the house and they'd always chat and answer any questions the householder might have. They'd always check in the loft. They'd always check the boiler and check the walls and that sort of thing. Yeah, and then
so the delivery of the energy saving bit will be after the assessment. There will be sort of an intro to the house owner. So that would be an appointment that would be made by your admin department, would it? Or would it be the contractor who's coming to do the work?
Oh, the admin department.
I'm trying to get our viewer, who may be this little old lady sat in her front room, who's actually probably quite frightened about people coming to her house because she's by her jacks, so she feels vulnerable. How do we reassure her that the process of the work to be carried out is sort of controlled by somebody, or is it controlled by the body who will do the work?
Well, the local district council will send someone to the house and they'd give the advice and they'd fill in a form which they pass on to the admin side. Yes. Administrator will then get in touch with them.
Yeah,
and let them
I think
know
we've accepted, we've done all that. We've agreed this is what we agreed to do. It's actually the mechanics of that being done.
Yes, of course. Then the administrator, using our accredited sort of services, the local companies that we use and trust, then she'd get in touch with them and someone would come over to that house and put in the loft insulation or whatever the measure was, and then a certain number of those are checked afterwards by the council just to check that they were properly.
So you do a quality check.
So we do quality checks afterwards.
So if you do 2% and there's a failure, then you increase and then you carry on to make sure. Okay. So the contractor signs off the work themselves in most instances.
I believe so.
Yeah. Okay. Now, this program that is running started apparently in December.
Yes.
Which is already into winter. But there must have been very good reasons for that, I'm sure. But what it does do, it runs through until the 31st of March.
Yes.
So it is a time-limited offer that you have here. But I'm told by Catherine, providing you have booked, would that be right? By the survey by the 31st of March. And this assumes there's some money left in the pot, I take it.
Yes, I mean...
Can we discuss the size of the pot?
I don't know that much about the money side of it.
Oh, right. Only I read...
I think we've got a fair amount of money.
I think what it says here is that following the success of Warm Homes, Healthy People last year, Suffolk County Council and its partners are pleased to confirm that this year we have managed to agree an even larger amount of money. That's £315,000 worth of funding. Yeah. To, as we've sort of agreed, probably to look at something like certainly 6,000 to 7,000 dwellings.
We're hoping to do 1,500 energy surveys, but
right.
Yes.
So that would be a quarter of those that we know to be at risk. If that's what we're looking at. No, in fact, it's not. It's 50. Well, it's a lot of survey. It's a lot of survey. But what I hadn't fully realised is just how big the demand and the need is. And when we then relate that to the fuel poverty, then we look at it. I mean, the health and well-being exhibition was really all about how the quality of people's lives could be improved.
Yeah.
And one of the key elements of that was if they're in a warm home, they're going to be much healthier than if they're in a cold home.
That's the message.
So medical conditions are not going to develop at the rate that they would do in a cold home. So it seems almost, what's the word? In that we haven't addressed this with enough figure in the past. The health cost of not having done it far outweighs what the cost would have been if we hadn't done it.
Yeah, of course.
Because you're looking at, not looking at sort of hundreds of thousands. You're actually looking at millions, aren't you?
Yeah.
Really. That's not your fault. It's a policy decision that there's only so much in the pot and whatever.
Do what we can.
And sort of in the closing minutes we have now, this is a poster you should see around. There are a significant number of road shows that you're doing.
Yeah.
Though I note, as far as I can see, your shot at the Orwell. I don't see Felixstowe or the Trimleys or anywhere in your current lot, but you do talk about supplementary road shows. So these are these. We will put these up on the site for you to have a look to see when and which are nearest, but perhaps we could make a request that we consider doing one here, and perhaps we do it in the Co-op or Lidl or somewhere, and we do it on a Thursday or a Friday when people are doing their shop, because that's when you get quite a lot of footfall through our stores, and that might be, or if you really want to brave the elements, you could always do the Triangle on a Saturday in the centre of town, but you wouldn't really have electricity supply or whatever, which you might need to do what you need to do.
Well,
but I mean, that's certainly something I think would be worthwhile doing, particularly in that the old offer ends on the 31st of March, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, yeah. I mean, we've got quite a lot of dates in the diary because we're trying to get all over Suffolk. So
yes, it's a big
county.
It's
quite a large place.
Yes, it is. It is.
Yeah.
And I suppose, really, with regards to the already identified, perhaps up to a third of dwellings in our village communities, perhaps they're the ones who need the greatest help, most help, and the soonest.
Yeah.
But we do have the same problem here, that's for sure, because we have some quite elderly old housing as well as elderly old people living in, don't we? Now, could we just, in the closing minutes, have a quick look at this scheme that people have been aware of, or hopefully are aware? It was launched on Monday, wasn't it?
Yes, yesterday. Yeah.
So this is this wonderful thing. It's called the Green Home Improvement.
I think is it called Green Deal?
I think you're right. I think you're right. You've got it. It
yeah,
is.
Green Deal.
It's called the Green Deal.
Scheme.
Now, would you like to share with us what you know about it? Or would you like me to go through what this wonderful article in the Times said on Sunday?
Well, as I understand it, the Green Deal is a government initiative, and it is a loan on the household. So if a household would like to get loft insulation, cavity wall insulation, or larger measures such as solar panels, they can get take out a loan from the government, which is on the household, and then the loan is paid back through their energy bills.
Right.
There is a golden rule that it has to be paid back within 10 years.
Right.
So that, and so it means there's no upfront costs, but it's paid back gradually through the energy bills.
Okay, I've got a real problem with this in basics. What it's saying, as I read it, and we can perhaps put this article up as well, is that the intent is that this energy saving measure that you're going to implement, be it double glazing, be it loft insulation, be it replacement boiler, will save you a significant amount of energy. And depending on the size of that, that's a saving on your energy bill. And it will be that energy you're saving which will pay for the capital cost of the thing that's saving it.
That's the idea.
But for you, who's paying this bill, you will be paying pretty much what you were paying previously, and you were then in fuel poverty. So having done this, you will still be in fuel poverty, because you won't be actually spending any less. Granted, you won't be using as much energy.
No.
And this gets back to the earlier question of the payback time of the improvement schemes, and this is when we go into, well, we should all have double glazing, yes, but then go and get a price for double glazing. And what I see here, what it states is that the actual loan value can be up to £10,000.
Yeah.
Well, they go on to look at a property in London, and this was to do external glazing because it was a solid wall, and you were looking at several more thousands than that cost. You know, so I think it's going to need a lot more thinking, and really to a degree, we must be looking at sort of central energy grants coming from central government, mustn't we?
Well, I believe that this is from central government, but that is true what you've said about Green Deal, except Green Deal is working with the energy company obligation, which is ECO, and the ECO is there to help the people who are less well off and also who are in harder to treat homes. So in that situation, the energy companies themselves, because they've got obligations to meet certain criteria to reduce the energy, to improve the energy efficiency.
Well, I mean, if we can reduce the amount of energy that's needed, then the capital cost of providing that is a significant saving for all of us.
Yes, and so the energy companies provide the money for the measures for the particularly. So if someone meets the criteria for needing financial help, or if they're in a hard to treat home, so solid wall home, I believe that they can get help through ECO, which is it's different. It's more that it's much more helpful actually.
Okay, Catherine. Thank you very much for coming in today. I think we've started a discussion. And I think there's a lot more meat to be got out of this. So what I'll do, I'll invite you to come and look at my home.
Okay.
At some point, and what we'll try to do is to look at the things that you identify, and then perhaps what I might do is get some full costings. And then we can really look at, you know, it in detail. That might be an interesting thing to do and make a program on. So our viewer could actually have in real terms, you know, I live in an 1851 building. It is solid walls. It has quite unique windows because some of them were of that period. And I feel to get PVC double glazed units wouldn't really be real. But it would be interesting to have you come in from outside to look at it and give us a view. One thing that I wanted to know, what help is there currently around for boiler replacement, certainly for people who've got very inefficient boilers? We did have an elderly neighbour 2 or 3 years ago who had hers replaced. I think that was grant because of, you know, her financial circumstances. Is that scheme still about, or has that ceased?
I'm not sure about that scheme specifically, but I know that we do have a bit of money to go towards boiler repairs for people who meet the criteria. So there is certainly money available for that. There's also money available for people who are really struggling with their bills, to give them a little bit of money, financial help towards their bills. And also for people who are in the more difficult situations and whose central heating is broken, we can also provide temporary loans of heaters. Yes, if their central heating is just completely broken this winter, then they need
that always happens on the coldest day of the year.
Exactly. So we are there to help with things like that as well.
Catherine, we've got to close because the time's caught up with us, but thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Can I just give the number out?
Yes, again.
The number to call for the home energy survey or any other advice is 08456 037 686.
And this will be appearing past this live streaming. That will be sat with other information on the website, so it's available to all of you digital folk there on the internet. Thank you very much for viewing today, and we will continue this dialogue because we're going to be in a similar situation next winter and the winter and the winter after, because today we found it's a much bigger problem than any of us perhaps fully understood. 460 people in Suffolk dying from the cold because their homes are too cold surely is unacceptable in the 21st century. Thank you very much.